Cosmetics Tartelette in Bloom palette. And I'm picking up Sweetheart first. So this Sigma E40 taper blending brush is the brush that I always pick up first when I start my eyeshadow look. Anytime I start any type of look, I always pick up the shadow first to apply my transition shade through my crease. So what your transition shade is going to do, it's going to really just make a nice base for all of the other shadows and make everything really nice and blendable, and it's going to add a nice hint of dimension underneath. When you layer shadows, you get a nicer, more blended and flawless look. So I love layering shadows. I know it might seem a little extra, but trust me, it makes such a difference at the end. So now I'm picking up this shadow on my Sigma E40 taper blending brush, and now I'm going to start running that through my crease. I don't know why I always do this. I always start tapping that on the outer corner, and then I use like really short strokes. I start going more and more towards the inner corner. And then you start using windshield wiper motion. So what you're doing is just starting from the outer corner and bringing that in. And I never go all the way in. I stop like about 3/4 of the way into my eye. So then I go back and forth. And then little circular motions to really just blend that out. So you're barely going to see the shadow, but it is going to add a nice blendability and dimension to the look. I'm then going into Rebel. So I just wiped off this same E40 taper blending brush by Sigma, and I picked up this shadow on it. So always tap off the excess off your shadow. Even if there's not going to be follow, I still always tap it off just in case, because if you tap off your brush, just tap it off on something like hard, and then, or you could just tap it off on the top of the palette like that, and then that should release a lot of that fallout, and that's just going to eliminate a lot of fallout on your cheek, and it's just going to make it so much prettier. So now I'm picking that same shadow up on that brush, and see, I apply that first on the outer corner, and then I start blending that slowly. I'm using a really light hand for this, and by light hand I mean I'm applying the brush in my crease with really light pressure, and I start going back and forth, and I'm using windshield wiper motions again. So when you use a brush like this that's more fluffier rather than like a denser brush, you're going to get a more diffused out crease area, and that's what you want. You don't want a lot of shadow packed into your crease right away. You want this to be the base, and then when you go in with a denser brush, that's when you really want to darken up your crease with a denser brush. Now it's darkening up my crease. I'm picking up Leader. So as you can see, now I'm going in with a darker shadow, and I'm moving on to my Sigma E25 blending brush. I cannot live without these two brushes. The E40 and the E25 are amazing, and they completely transform the way I do my crease shadow and how much more blended and beautiful and buffed out my shadows look because of these brushes. They're amazing. So now you can see also I started off with a lighter transition shade, and then I built up a little bit to a darker transition shade, and now I'm going in with my darkest crease shadow. So just keep building up your shadows and always start with less shadow on your brush, because you can always build up. If you start with more shadow on your brush, then that's much harder to take away and try to lighten. So definitely start off with less and then build your way up. And also I picked that shadow up on the tip of my brush, and this brush is amazing because it has a tapered sort of effect. So it's going to have longer bristles at the top and then shorter bristles around it. And that's really going to help that blending much easier, and I'll show you why that tapered effect really helps. So once again, I don't know if you guys can see also, the brush sort of goes like a little bit flat. So I take that angle of the brush, I pat that on the outer corner, and then I'm using such a light hand. You're going to use the lightest pressure of any of the brushes. You're going to use the lightest pressure with this brush because I'm applying my darkest crease shadow. And once again, I always raise my brow. It's definitely the easiest way to get that shadow into your crease. And then I'm applying that again in windshield wiper motions, going back and forth. And then once you feel that you have much less product left on that brush and you got that all into your crease, this is where I'm going to teach you guys how to really, really nicely blend out your shadows. So the transition shades you can see already started to kind of peek through, and that's going to help a lot with that diffusing of that crease area. And oh my god, I have so much to say, but I feel like I can't get it all out at once, and I'm like confusing myself because I have so much to say, and I'm just like rambling, and it's not coming out the way I want. So just bear with me, guys. I hope you guys are learning something and it's like helping so far. Okay, so once that shadow is through the crease, this is my biggest recommendation for making your shadow really nice and blended. So I don't know how I'm going to show you guys on camera. So I'm looking straight ahead right now into my mirror. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt my head down, and I'm going to look up towards the mirror. Then I lift my brow, put my brush right into my crease, lift it, then release of your brow, and then you're going to put that brush in there and you're going to go back and forth. So because this brush has that tapered effect and the shorter bristles are around and then the longer bristles are in the center, that's really just going to buff out that crease area. Then you're going to lift that brush upward and then straighten your head. Place that brush right between where you see that harshness and start blending. And using a really, really light hand and circular motions. Now moving back to my E40 taper blending brush, this is that fluffier brush. This is where the whole diffused, really, really blended out look is going to come through. So it already looks really blended, but I want to bring back some of that warmer, more orangey shadows. This is where you start with a transition shade, but you want to bring back that transition shade because the darkness can cover it up just slightly, and that's where that layering effect creates more dimension and more beautiful blended diffused look. So now I'm picking that up again and I'm applying such light pressure, and my hand again is towards the end of the brush. So I put the brush, I feel where the bristles are, and I try to put that between where my crease shadow ends and then a little bit below that, and then start going back and forth again, and then circular motions towards the outer corner to really blend that out. To highlight my brow bone, I'm picking up Charmer. So now for my brow bone shadow, I think brow bone shadows are very, very, very important. You always have to highlight your brow bone, and that's not just because highlighting your brow bone actually gives you a more arched, more beautiful lifted brow look, but I think it also helps clean up a lot of the mistake that you did if you maybe went a little bit too high with your crease shadow or anything like that. So most of the time I like to use a matte brow bone shadow. So I start by first patting that because I apply a good amount. So I first start patting that in, then I swipe once, and then I still have some left on my brush, and I bring that into that inner corner because I have this issue where I always bring my crease shadow really high right here for some reason. That's just the way my eye is shaped, and all my shadows just fall right there. And then you're just going to brush that through, and then I use the tip of the brush with a really light hand and just blend that down. So I just picked up Leader on my Sigma E25 blending brush, and I'm just going to pat that on this outer corner right here. And when you pat shadows on, whether it's with a fluffy brush or with a more denser and chubbier brush that's more of like a shader brush, I always pack on. I place and pack, place and lift off, and that just packs on the shadow really nicely. So if you're doing a smoky eye, definitely go in with a shader brush and just pack that shadow onto your lid. Or if you want a shimmery lid, and then go in with a shimmer shadow. You can totally, the options are endless, so you can totally do